On the radio in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, online at WTK.com. Sam Webb, Mr. Ira Weintraub on the other side, and joining us as they do every single Thursday in the 9 o'clock hour, the MGoBlog crew for the MGoBlog Roundtable. Always have a great time with the guys, and this time of year, especially when we can talk about their great preview piece that they do every single year, a Hail to the Victors 2023. So we'll give you a glimpse of that like we do every single week leading up to the season. First, let's go with the intros, starting off first with the man that started it all at MGoBlog, Brian Cook. Brian,
hello.
How are you?
Did you know that Paramount Plus, when they broadcast Brazilian League matches, they use the SEC on CBS theme when someone scores a goal? It's crazy.
I did not know that. No,
it's insane.
The more you know, I didn't hear the sounder, man. Thought that was going to come through at that point. It'll come up. We also have Seth Fisher with us. Seth, how are you this morning?
I'm good, but I'm on the same Paramount Plus plan, so I had to I wasn't able to watch soccer because someone else was using it.
All right. Well, you just look like relief. I see relief on your face these days because Hail to the Victors is done. It's out. It's there for people to get, right?
It is, and I'm going to even have print copies in hand in about maybe a little bit over a week's time. They're going to ship them out in a week. But man, it's one thing I love about the every writer made sure he worked 45-23 into his article somewhere. So we brag that we have the most 45-23s of any Michigan preview that's out there this year. But the other thing they do is everyone's got like some little nugget you learned that you're gonna like point to and just know something about the team this year. I was just looking over Cody Alexander's article for some reason, and I noticed he has this point where he explains when you have a bunch of receivers bunched up, that means they're expecting man coverage, and that's like a way to beat man coverage. And the more you spread them out, that beats zone coverage. And it's like, that's something that people do football a lot know, and and people who are just like fans are at the game and like are looking down the field and go, oh, I can see that every single time. So that's one thing I love about this book, and the way that these writers approach football is just, man, I love it.
All right, and back. We missed you, Craig Ross. People, where's Craig? Craig needed a break. Had to get rejuvenated, right? He's back.
No, that's not true. I thought I was fired for my ridiculous salary demands, but apparently not. Ira disabused me of that. Hail to the Victors is really, really good. It's something, discounting any part I haven't. I mean, what Seth and Brian have done with this is remarkable. I just started to read Greg Dooley's stuff in there on NIL. It's fantastic. The writing is good. His content on what Michigan's doing on NIL is just fantastic. I mean, it is the best football magazine on the market, and Seth and Brian deserve major credit, as does Alex Drain, for the work they put in on it. It's really good, and I'll read it all year. I know that. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
So speaking of 45-23, let's just start with that. Michigan has dominated Ohio State the last couple of years, but according to Joel Klatt, who's called those games, it's just not indicative of who the better team is per se. So I'll read you a quote. He said, this is Klatt. This is what's so fascinating is that I would classify both of those last two wins for Michigan as upsets. I don't think that Michigan beats Ohio State, that Ohio State team 6 out of 10. I think they might beat them 3 or 4 out of 10. I'm not saying it's drastically a difference, but you saw in the game against Georgia with Ohio State, the talent level is very clear. There's some things that happened in that game. I'm not taking anything away because Michigan, they did have an identity and they beat Ohio State thoroughly. What I'm trying to say, though, is that I don't think that would be the case if they did it a third time. I remember listening to that game, questioning both commentators, like, what game are they watching? Michigan is not able to run the football on Ohio State because Ohio State is more physical. That's the kind of commentary they were offering. Did I see this from Klatt? Talk about if they played a third time after Michigan's blowout got worse the second year. He said, if they played them a third time, Michigan wouldn't win. What do you guys make of Klatt's commentary?
I guess I interpreted that differently. I thought what that was saying is that, if Michigan goes and beats Ohio State this year, that it won't feel the same as the previous 2 years. It won't feel like an upset to him. That's kind of what I got from that. I'm not sure if I'm reading that correctly, but that was.
I didn't get that.
I mean, Brian could be right. I mean, to me, it's genuine frontier gibberish. I have no idea what.
Really?
But it sounds to me like a carryover of his commentary from the game until Michigan made the commentary. They rendered it ridiculous. They rendered it moot. All that stuff they were spouting off in the first half.
I don't want to spout off on Joel Klatt that much because I love Joel Klatt.
Yeah, I like Joel Klatt too.
He is the best at like looking at the game that moment and saying like, oh, here's what happened that play. It drives me nuts because our job is to go back and watch these plays later and break them down, and he's doing it in real time, like on TV. I'm like, Joel, you're too good. But the like when you break that game down from and you look at every single play, and I don't think he's gone back and watched every single play of this game and seen how like the meta and what was going on. What was going on in that game was Michigan was just a much better football team. Ohio State had no answer for the main thing that Michigan could do. Michigan could push them off the ball, and they did not have the defensive tackles to hold up, just like Michigan didn't have the defensive tackles to hold up in 2019. They just got duoed down the field until you do stupid things, and that's what Ohio State had to do. They had to play stupid in order to counter the fact that they could not play straight up. And
if you look at what the shape of that game, it's easy to see why it felt like that, right? Because Michigan did nothing offensively until the first Cornelius Johnson touchdown, and they got another big play from Johnson later in that half. And down, nothing was happening. Nothing. And, you got to actually go back and look at it in depth to see that the reason that was the case was that Jim Knowles was just super aggressive. And that's something that TCU did too. So usually the pattern of a football team is you get aggressive and then you get burned by it. And TCU's approach was like, we don't care if we get burned. We're just going to keep doing this. And I felt like that was both of the Ohio State game and the TCU game. And so that's unusual. That level of aggression, that level of safeties in the box just doesn't really happen. And so you have this narrative from the Ohio State fans that are like, oh, it was only 5 big plays, which is like, you can say that number can be 1. It was 1 big play. That was the difference in the game. 5, that's not the right number. You can't say that.
They should have said it was only 5 because there were more big plays out there that Michigan didn't realize. And that's, to me, the commentary, because I think Klatt's really good. And I think that he does his research more than many. But, I think that a lot of these guys take for granted that, most of the people watching just take what they say as gospel. And if you weren't watching that game close like you guys were too, you wouldn't see that, man, Michigan, that they weren't running the football well wasn't about Ohio State. It was about being down their top 2 running backs. Well, when their number 2 running back figured out how to play with his hand, it was a different ball game.
Yeah, and then there was that drive in the third quarter where they finally backed off and Michigan goes on a 17-play march. Like, it's like I think you could see that was what Knowles was afraid of, and that's why his defensive approach was what it was. I'm just saying from the perspective of, someone who's just watching the game on TV, it did feel like Michigan goes into the half. I think they were up a point, and that felt like a huge fluke. And it's only once you dig back into the film that you're like, okay, no, these big plays are a natural result of the way Ohio State's playing.
Yeah.
That kind of changes your opinion of what happened in that game.
Yeah, I don't know what Klatt thinks. I mean, because I don't understand what that gibberish means. but I mean, but I do know what Ohio State thinks. Ohio State thought they couldn't play Michigan straight up.
Right.
I mean, we know what they thought, because I don't think Knowles is a stupid guy. And he thought the only way we're going to win this game is by selling out. And so they sold out, and Michigan burned them 5 times, whatever it was, and put up 45 points. And so regardless of what Joel Klatt may think, and I'm not sure what that statement says or means.
Right. I guess I'm
we
just
know
confused,
what
man. I mean, it got worse. It got worse during the game, and it got worse from year to year, and it was on the road. And you saw a defensive coordinator that looked like he had no answers. People keep referencing the point in the game where Klatt says this is the biggest defensive series of Knowles' career or something. He said this is why they hired him, and then that's when go ahead.
I mean, you can't break it down to like just one play, but like if you want to look at one of those one of the big long Edwards touchdowns at the end, there's 2 main things that happen. One, Knowles has a safety brought down. They're running a scrape exchange. So, like, it's supposed to kill anyone who tries to run a zone read, and Michigan runs a zone read. So he actually has the right play call on. One of his guys, who's supposed to just go after the running back no matter what, stops and holds up when he sees the zone read, because he sees J.J. McCarthy might keep it, and this is like the moment Michigan's going to use their quarterback as a runner. So both guys who are coming, but one of them's supposed to take the running back, the other one takes the quarterback, and boom, plays over. Both of them are basically on the quarterback, because one of them just holds up for just that 1 second, and that's one of your safeties. That's a guy who's not even supposed to be in the box. So Knowles had the right play call on to stop what Michigan was doing, but his guys are so terrified of JJ's legs, which is understandable. And the other thing that happens on that play is Zinter and Olu just blow a guy off. I think it was Taron Vincent, who's a almost 5-star defensive tackle, and they just blow that guy off the ball.
Well, yeah, he was also a UDFA, so he's a guy who didn't really pan out there.
Right.
So they double through him, and he's trying, like, he's slanting into a gap, and Michigan, Zinter in particular, his impact on Vincent just stalls him out so that Olu can step around him, and then he picks up a linebacker, and then there's your gap in the line. And there's no one behind it. The first Edwards run, he just outran Ransom. And then the second one, Ransom is being spent on this blitz where he screws it up. And that's one thing that I think was a major factor, is that I've never seen a safety play a worse game than Lathan Ransom.
Yes.
Like,
well, he was a highly regarded guy, wasn't he?
Well,
wasn't he
yeah.
or a 5-star guy?
There was some Pro Football Focus tweet about safeties grading.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was Big Ten safeties. And Moore is up there, and Makari Page is up there. And Lathan Ransom was like 3rd in the Big Ten, I think. And every comment from both Michigan and Ohio State fans in this Twitter thread was, he must have had a 100 going into the Michigan game.
Yeah.
Because it was Ransom on the Colston Loveland touchdown. It was Ransom on both Edwards touchdowns. It was probably Ransom blowing a coverage on the second Edwards second Cornelius Johnson touchdown.
You know, the Mullings throw, it was Ransom.
Well, the Mullings throw, every single Ohio State player was committed to the line of scrimmage at the point of the handoff. Like, I made this point in the UFR, is that didn't need to be a trick play. If it was just a standard play action throw, it's a walk-in touchdown, because literally everybody's about to cross the line of scrimmage. So that was their approach. And Michigan struggled through parts of that game because you just don't see that kind of thing very often. But I do think it speaks to the distorting effect that Michigan's ground game had, even when Blake Corum was not available. And you had a pretty good inkling that Blake Corum probably wasn't going to be available. So yeah, it paid off. The body blows paid off in a 45-23 win over Ohio State. Was there a particular reason we were talking about this game again, or is it just fun to do?
No, it's just
It's just fun to talk about.
Well, you mentioned 45-23. It made me.
Why are you asking this, Brian?
It made me mention or think of this comments from Klatt that we just saw this week. I guess he just made them. Ira, what was he on when he said that?
Colin Cowherd this week.
Yeah. So he was talking about it this week, and he's of the mind that if Michigan had played Ohio State a third time, that I guess if they had played them, let's say they played in the Big Ten championship game in that span, that Michigan wouldn't have won that game, and the Georgia game is proof of that. And I'm like, man, what game were you watching?
I mean, the other, we hadn't even talked about the other side of the ball. There's a 23 component to that as well. And Ohio State scored 4 points fewer than they did the season before with basically the same offense and, the incredible receiver core and everything. Michigan has changed their defense, right? They had the whole Don Brown system just got exposed. And so they went to a pro-style defense, which works against a pro-style offense. What is Ohio State? They are the most pro-style offense in college football, right? They have a pro quarterback sitting behind 4 offensive tackles and a center and throwing to receivers who, if you give them a one-on-one with anybody, whoever's got leverage, he's going to win, right? Marvin Harrison eats a 10-yard cushion against Jamon Green in this game, runs by him. There's some contact, it doesn't matter, and he gets the ball and he runs it in, right? That's what Ohio State's offense is created to do. Michigan's defense is created to mess, especially with young NFL quarterbacks. And they practiced it all year. We talked about Ohio State going off script, doing something that they don't normally do because they were afraid of Michigan. Michigan practices how to beat Ohio State every single day. I don't mean just like the Ohio State drill. Their defense is the defense you would want to install if your job was to beat Ohio State. And they leaked yards all season playing the same defense because this is the way you play Ohio State.
Yeah, man, I think Michigan had them. I'm gonna have to see how much of this text that I can read, because I asked about that first touchdown, and as much as you might have had Ohio State, one of the players make a flub, there was a line check that they made that was killer. It made the play. It made the play. It was the reason the touchdown was scored, was the line call, because they knew what Ohio State was going to come with defensively when they lined up in a certain formation. So I don't think it was just guys making mistakes. It was Michigan having scouted the hell out of them and put them in position where they were going to make a mistake. It was just, it might not have, maybe it wasn't going to be a touchdown, but it was going to be a big play. It wound up being a huge play and a touchdown. I got to see how much of this. I got to find the text, because I remember asking about it.
I mean, I'm not talking tactically. I'm talking strategically. Michigan's base defense, the way they play. There's a play early in the game on when Michigan's on defense that Ohio State actually gets, I think, 7 yards on a 2nd and 8. So it was a successful play for Ohio State. When you break down what happens on this play, Ohio State noticed something that Michigan was doing. They checked into it. Michigan got them to check into what they wanted to. They checked out of a situation that they actually had an advantage with Marvin Harrison and went away from him and his whole side of the field. And Michigan ends up with more guys on that side of the field than Ohio State does. And Stroud is reading his progressions, and he goes 1, 2, 3, 4. He gets to his 5th progression. Nobody's supposed to get to their 5th progression. Your defensive ends are supposed to get to the quarterback by the 5th progression. And he actually gets to that guy. He breaks a tackle and he gets an extra few yards. But it was basically a dump down to the tight end. That was Michigan's defense. They knew what Ohio State, they mess with your reads so much. It's really hard to figure out. Even their post-snap movement shows you something different than what they're actually running.
I found my question. So I said, when 33 was in the game in 3-4 defense, did you automatically go through to a 3-man zone on the backside? It looks like Olu is making a call on Donovan's first long touchdown. All I got was a wink. All I got was a wink, man. So
I mean, that play, it's like a 3-man line, and the nose tackle is shaded to, like, he's on Olu's left, and there's just this huge gap to the right. And so he knows someone's going to show up there. Like, it's either going to be the slanted nose tackle, or it's going to be a linebacker showing up. But the linebackers aren't in the spot for that. So I think, he knows what's coming.
He knows.
I don't think that's necessarily an Ohio State thing. It's just an Oluwatimi thing.
Yeah, it was. They definitely, it was something that Ohio State would do with, what's 33's name? I can't remember the dude's name.
Taryn Vincent.
for Ohio State?
No. No. It's a JT Tuimoloau.
That's not 33.
No.
That's not 33.
33. Oh,
I'll get his name. I'll get his name. Anyway, I don't want to get too deep, especially when you aren't showing plays. My point is there was a call. They zoned the backside on that play, and that was and it was a check. And that was what made it go for what wound up being a huge play. But that's great scouting.
Sawyer.
Yeah, to me that's some Big 12 stuff right there. It's
Jack Sawyer. Thank you, Mr. Weintraub.
Yeah.
That's my spotter over there.
You got a 3-man line, and you're like, okay, we're gonna fool these guys because this is a Big 12 offense that doesn't have the in-depth NFL style blocking that Michigan does. And like, okay, we're gonna cross them up, and we're gonna be like, oh, surprise! And Michigan's just like, dude, come on.
Thank you very much. Yeah, people are in there. Jack Sawyer, you guys are great. Yeah. Anyway, I didn't mean to go off on that, but you mentioned 45-23, and it made me think of Joel Klatt, who I actually do think knows he is so much better than most of the guys doing it just on this Ohio State thing, man. They're watching stars, guys. They're watching stars. They're star watchers, stargazers, and not watching.
You still need to have. I mean, you have to run Michigan's defense takes a lot, and I don't know if Michigan's gonna be able to run the same defense this year because they don't have experienced cornerbacks like they did last year. Now they've surprised me before, and they installed it in 1 year. So what Mike McDonald did in 2021 was astounding. You're not supposed to install a complicated NFL defense on a team that was recruited and has only run cover 1 and a little bit of cover 2, right? And then they're good at it. But like that, Georgia was not running that defense. Georgia's still a line up and play because Georgia's everyone they run up against, including Alabama, they can match corner for right receiver, and that's how they play.
Yeah, so here's I'll read this. Just a source said we watched it all year and knew whenever we saw that look, at some point the ball was going to hit for a big one, and boy, did it hit for a big one. It hit for a huge one. So telling you, Joel, they play that game again, it's worse. It's worse. Now, the question now is what kind of adjustments did Ohio State make in the offseason? Because this is going to tell us a lot about Jim Knowles, because he seemed to have no clue after the game as to what happened. Zero clue. He's like, oh, Michigan made some major adjustments, and, we didn't adjust to the adjustments. Not quite, dude, because the guys for Michigan said they didn't make any adjustments. They just kept doing what they were doing, and it worked. It worked better. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, he had an all-time stinker of a game from a safety, and that's really hard to deal with, right? Because you can do everything you want, and if the guy who's supposed to be the safety valve can't tackle anybody ever, I mean,
well, here's to your point that you made earlier, Ryan. You think that once you get burned like they did, you become more cautious. And they didn't do that. And if you
but then TCU didn't either. Like they could have run that flea flicker 6 straight times for 6 touchdowns, and it's just, it felt very strange. I mean, Michigan put up like 45 in that game with 2 pick sixes. They had put up 45 in that game. They got inside the 2 on 2 separate occasions and didn't score at all. It's not like their approach worked, but there were frustrations in there. And I think that was similar with the Ohio State game, is that you couldn't say their approach worked, but on a down-to-down basis, it felt real frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the window to use that weakness against Michigan is shrinking, because what that does is it takes advantage of the fact that Michigan, A, wants to rely on their running game more than they want to rely on J.J. McCarthy, and B, that their receivers are just not going to they're not going to be able to hook up downfield, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's Michigan doesn't want to use JJ's legs. Michigan does, and have him run around and expose him as much as possible, so you can just catch them trying to get 5 yards on first down. And then it's also they're supposed to miss downfield every once in a while. I don't think they're going to miss very often, and I think now that JJ's a third-year quarterback and they're not going into the season with 2 different guys, they're going to design the offense around him. One thing people didn't notice, we didn't talk about much, in the spring game, there was a lot of arc read, there was a lot of zone read, there was a lot of quarterback running game. Now, I don't think they're going to expose JJ to that much running because, like, you got to get through this. The one thing you have to do this year is get that guy healthy to the Ohio State game. But it's going to be part of the offense.
No question.
And that
Yeah.
that was a big part of the Ohio State game and big part of Michigan scoring so much late in the TCU game.
Yeah, in my mind, I see Michigan playing a lot of quarterbacks this year through the first half of the season in particular. And they do have other quarterbacks who can run, as you saw in the spring, that Orji looks like a pretty good runner. And so I think you're going to see guys. I think Warren and Tuttle are going to play a lot too. I think they're going to try and protect JJ through the end of the season as much as possible. I have a question for you guys. I thought Raheem Anderson looked great in the spring game. I thought he was a killer. And yet you have Nugent coming in, who Pro Football Focus loves, and I don't know if you guys have watched Nugent at all, but he's pretty highly regarded at the position. And so do you see any sort of a drop off from Oluwatimi to Raheem / Nugent, or what may go on there? Yeah, you do.
The dude won the Remington and deserved to win the Remington, and I don't think I've ever. And I don't know if I've ever charted a guy who just never screwed up. And it's hard to tell with line calls and all that stuff, but I just didn't ever see him make a mental mistake. And I think Drake Nugent is going to be an all Big Ten level center probably. But if we see another Oluwatimi in my time at charting, I'll be very happy. Yeah. So I don't think it's going to be a big drop off. I don't think it's going to be a problem spot, but I just think that dude was, he came in ready to roll. I never seen anything like that. And I know the Stanford transfer is probably going to be up there mentally as well. So but you're just asking for a second unicorn. Do you need a second unicorn, Craig? Can we just have one unicorn?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's bound to be a drop off. A guy, you think about the variables for a guy to come in and be a newcomer and pick up the scheme and be mistake free as he was. You aren't gonna. I just have a hard time believing it'll be as seamless. But at the same time, it won't be a precipitous drop. But to your point, Craig, I'm not ready. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. I think it's likely. I obviously think it's likely that Drake Nugent is the guy. But man, from between watching Raheem and listening to what the guys have said during the offseason about Raheem, I think it is going to be a legit battle. It's going to be a legit competition, and not just for the sake of saying, hey, we have competition at every position. I think he will seriously challenge. I think it's a lot to overcome, though, a guy with the kind of playing experience that a guy like Drake Nugent has. So I think he's for sure the favorite, but I don't think it's locked in or etched in stone based on the major strides that Raheem is really taking here over the past year.
I think you're going to see a little different.
I liked Anderson in his brief moments on the field. I thought he made a number of impressive blocks, and I thought that he had a real shot at the center job this year before Michigan hit the portal. So, I think he'll be ready, and I don't think Michigan's going to hit the portal for a center next year because I think he'll be good.
Yep.
I've been watching Nugent, and he's going to be really good in a different way. He's like a David Molk kind of guy where just you ask him to pick up a reach block, and that's like when you block a guy who was actually on the play side of you, right? And you get around him, and when that happens, defenses are not designed to have that block, to lose that block, because you're already in advantage. You're not, and most offenses aren't going to try that. So when that happens, it's almost always a big gainer. And Nugent is probably going to be the best at that Michigan's had at center since David Molk. He is very agile. He's like just he's built low. He's like a little bowling ball out there, and just it's gonna be very different than Olu. Like they put Olu in space, and he had some good plays against Hawaii and stuff, but he wasn't getting around guys the way that he was. He was big, and he didn't make mistakes. And not making mistakes is the biggest thing you can do on offensive line. But Nugent is very smart. I think they got a real player in him, and I think that he's probably a one and done. And then Raheem Anderson is, because Nugent actually has 2 years to play.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah. But I'm guessing that's going to be a one and done, and then we're off.
All right. We got to get to a break. Before we do, want to remind those of you who are in the market for a new vehicle to get on board with Brighton Ford. You hear me talk about them all the time. There are people who truly care about their customers. And through July 31st, Brighton Ford is offering deals you cannot miss. Well-qualified lessees can lease a 2023 Ford F-150 for as low as $296 a month, or a 2023 Ford Bronco Sport for as low as $302 a month, both with only $3,500 down. And Brighton Ford has a huge selection of new Fords. They want to put you into a new car that's perfect for you. So shop at BrightonFord.com with free delivery, or stop by the dealership at Grand River and I-96 in Brighton. They now deliver right to your front door. It's a great time to get on board with Brighton Ford. We got to get to a break. More MGoBlog Roundtable on the other side here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTK, The Ticket.
Clear on the radio.
All right.
I saw something on your board, Sam. I don't know if you wrote it, about the gambling thing at Iowa.
Oh, yeah. So the Iowa guy. So, by the way, Crippen is still there. He's still committed.
Yeah, he's
I always
there.
thought when they brought both of those guys in, the guy more likely to play guard was Crippen. But he's still in there. They said he's made strides too. I just think Raheem made bigger ones. That's just the feel the vibe that I get coming out of there.
Crippen was your IMG center, and they needed a center, right? I think he was the guy that they cared a lot about getting, because if you're going to get a freshman who can play center, you have to go get one from IMG, because no one else has even played center at that part. Yeah. But Anderson played center 4 years for Cass Tech, so he knew what he was doing as well. Yeah,
which is crazy. And he was a captain, I think a sophomore captain.
Is Guara from IMG also?
No, he's from Ponte Vedra or something like that. He's up in the Jacksonville area.
All right.
So, but yeah, the representative that Iowa was going to send to the Big Ten Media Days had to back out because he's part of that gambling probe.
And it said 26 athletes at Iowa are involved in some concerns about gambling, and
somebody probably put the under at for scoring of an Iowa game a little too.
What is that? Usually 6.
Vegas says 8. Over under 18 points that Iowa's going to score, and everyone on that Iowa offense is like, hit it.
It'll be interesting to see how much better they are with the quarterback. That Cade will at least be more accurate than what's his name?
Petrus, was that his name?
Petrus, yeah. I almost called the man putrid. I couldn't remember his real name.
That's what Steve calls him.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I started calling the man Spencer Putrid because that's what Steve called him. I couldn't remember his actual name.
On our podcast earlier this week. Petrus took a long time to get the ball out. He's just it's just a slow release and a lot of looking, and that's not what McNamara is.
Just bad.
Just bad.
He was bad.
Sound like Alex Strain.
I mean, that's what's Spencer Petrus's problem? Yes.
Bad.
We're back in about 90 seconds. I think he's like a GA or something with the football team. He's still involved with the team. Would anybody listen to him? Does he have advice to give that you would listen to?
Hey, don't play like me.
Back in 90.
Yeah,
if you stick around and you commit everything to Iowa, you will play no matter how bad you are.
Spencer Petrus is like, hey, don't do any of that Petrus stuff. Look where it got me.
Yeah, they'll be better. I don't know that they'll be as improved as Jordan Palmer seems to think, but I think they'll be better.
I think Eric All's
he's super biased.
Matter. Yeah,
he's super biased, and he hates on JJ incessantly. But I digress.
Who is this?
He's Cade's quarterback guy. So, whatever chance he has to take shots at JJ publicly.
Carson Palmer's forgotten little brother.
Yeah, whatever chance he has to take a shot at JJ publicly or privately, he'll do it.
Yeah, that's bizarre. I mean, what's the point in that? I mean, if you want to pump up your guy.
Maybe his dude shouldn't have gotten his ass beat in an open competition. Like they played the first 2 games, and by the end of those 2 games, it was real obvious who was the starting quarterback. Like,
Yeah,
what are
it
you
was.
complaining about?
Yeah, it
Yep.
was.
I
Back
agree,
on radio in
Brian
about 20
Cook.
seconds, guys.
I agree. You make a lot of sense.
Sometimes.
Sam was definitely the one who was telling us that was going to happen too. I got to give you some credit for that.
All right, guys, stand by. We're back on radio. Back in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider Sports Talk 1050 WTKA online at WTK.com. So, guys, jumping around college football between SEC Media Days, the ongoing storyline coming out of the Big Ten with Northwestern, who they have officially named their interim coach. They're trying to get a veteran coach to come and hold his hand for a year. Dave Wannstedt turned him down. It was revealed this morning they're trying to get Skip Holtz to come in. There's lawsuits popping up everywhere with Northwestern. That will clearly be a big time question for everyone at Media Days. What do you know about what's going on in your program? The irony at SEC Media Days is the guy whose quote is making the rounds the most about Northwestern is Brian Kelly, who I don't know if you still have Brian Kelly's quote over there where he talked about and it's about accountability. And in our program, there's the coach knows about what's going on with the positions and with the trainers and all of these.
Well, wait, this is crazy.
Hey guys, here it goes. So he said, but I can tell you in my situation that a head coach is walking around those halls. A head coach is in the locker room. A head coach is eating with his team. A head coach knows his leadership team. He also has many other support staff members that are in constant contact with his football team, the strength staff, your mental performance teams. You have so many different outlets to touch those players on a day-to-day basis. That's how we operate within our program.
Yeah, the head coach is putting a guy 80 feet in the air in a windstorm.
We say he's very flawed.
Yeah, and
the message deliverer.
The
man who had a death in his program due to negligence should not be the one telling Northwestern.
Right.
Well, yeah.
I make him wrong.
Did I not say the same thing, Mr. Weintraub?
Yeah.
Jose Canseco was right too.
But at least he's taking the point of view that is like, okay, if this happened in my program, my ass would be fired and I would deserve it. Like
I would love to see somebody go around LSU and see how much attention Brian Kelly's actually paying to every single corner.
Well, I mean, there's a difference, I guess, between like, we're gonna let these kids race cars, and that's Georgia, that's not LSU. But like, I do think it is like he's like, if there was hazing in my program, that's on me, And we don't often see coaches do that.
Didn't he have a player sexually assault a girl at Notre Dame, and then
I thought that was at Central.
At Central, yeah. And I didn't see that element of self-reflection on that particular incident.
Well, the one you brought up, Craig, is the one that jumps out to me. I mean, the guy is saying before he goes up in the lift how petrified he is, and I mean, he's tweeting about it before practice, and everything that's going on in the program, right? Accountability. This kid, he's complaining to everyone. And you send him up there anyway. And what was the?
I get what Brian's saying, man. Like you do not. It's good to have some coach at least saying on the record, "Hey, the coach's accountability." Unfortunately, the coach who's saying that is only saying it because he's the one coach who's the biggest hypocrite in the entire game.
Right. Yeah. No question. The other. Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, I mean, this whole Northwestern thing just gets crazier every day to me. I mean, and I'm not sure how Northwestern's going to handle it because you've got Fitz suing Northwestern for his $40 million or whatever he's owed. I think it's something in that range, claiming, not that he can get his job back because he can't, but he's saying, hey, I'm owed the entire amount of this contract, saying that you didn't fire me for cause. You just fired me. And and since you didn't fire me for cause, you owe me $40 million. And I think that's close to what the number is. On the other hand, you got 8 to 20 players, maybe more, suing Northwestern and probably Fitz because of the hazing that went on under his watch. And I assume in that case, in the Fitz case, Northwestern's going to say, you know, hey, you were negligent in letting this go on. In the other case, they're going to have to say, well, we didn't know anything about it, and neither did our coach. So they're stuck in a situation of having to make very competing sort of defenses. I mean, now perhaps there's limitations problems in the case by the alleged victims or the probable. It seems like
Well, you're the
victims.
lawyer here. I mean, by virtue of the firing, haven't they already made the case for the?
Well,
for
they
the
sure,
players?
yeah, they sure have to walk a firm line. I mean, a thin line on this one, because I'm not sure I mean, I guess their defenses could be, hey, you voluntarily participated in this. You're a 6'7", 300-pound guy, and you later hazed people yourself when you were no longer a freshman. I don't know what their defenses are going to be. And then to layer it all on there, the current football players sign a letter. I wonder if it was drafted by Wilmer Hale, given how it was written, saying, I mean, it's a really not very literate and not very compelling letter.
Northwestern, like you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I feel sorry for Northwestern fans because, the one thing, and my sister is a Northwestern grad and a huge fan, and one of my best friends in Ann Arbor is a Northwestern guy, and, they laugh at their teams to some extent, but they're always very proud of the kids in the team. And yet this letter is so bad. I mean, it's a non-denial denial. It's sort of more implicating than exculpating, and so I don't know. It's a complete mess. I feel sorry for their fans. I feel sorry for the program in general, but I think this is going to go on now for years. They fire Fitz, but they've still got all the rest of the coaches in the program who have been there, for some of them some period of time. I don't. I mean, it's sad, but it's also pathetic. So I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be. I just hope that the powers that be, the AD, the president, hope they show up at media days next week and don't just send the interim coach and the players out to field all those.
I wonder if Fitz had not stood in the way of them unionizing a few years ago, if they might have avoided all of this.
Yeah, I mean,
if there was a players' union, there probably wasn't hazing going to continue going on.
I wonder if that isn't I wonder if unionization of athletes, college athletes, isn't a good idea in general. I mean, I think that maybe a lot of the problems that are going on might be mitigated to some extent by a good players union, but
definitely will, not just when it comes to treatment like this, but their primary objective when it comes to earnings, revenue sharing. I mean, that would be a means to unionization is a means to an end as far as that's concerned. I mean, that's what gets you there quicker. I just don't know that those guys are going to be together enough to say, hey, it's time to unionize. But I got to get these hockey questions in before we get out of here, guys. So the announcement made here a few days ago that Michigan, they had rounded out their staff. Now they can add a full-time goalie coach. I'm curious your impressions, if you've had a chance to look in depth into the additions and how impactful you think they will be.
Well, I mean,
so
go ahead. I'll let you talk. I talked about this once before. Go ahead, Brian.
So, I mean, the thing that really pops out is that you're hiring associate head coach from the Chicago Steel, which is the #1 USHL team in terms of talent annually. and you're adding the director of player personnel from the U.S. national team development program. And if you want recruiters, these guys seem extremely well placed to pick up where Bill McCall left off. And, you know, before I think Ryder is the national team guy, was their director of player personnel. He was their goalie coach. So that's an extremely snug fit, and having a full-time goalie coach, I think, is extremely important. Michigan lost their volunteer coach halfway through last season, and I think that had a deleterious effect on Portillo. And then they're bringing in, and both these guys are college hockey vets. It's hard to say anything definitive about their proficiency at coaching penalty kill or anything like that, because it's like so ambiguous in hockey, especially when you're looking at a team like the Chicago Steel, which is just annually going to out-talent almost everybody they play. But from a recruiting perspective, this looks like a home run. They're both young. They're both up-and-comers. They fit naturally into the needs for the program. So I think this is a pair of excellent hires.
Yeah, I definitely agree. What's the name of the other guy? I'm blocking on him right now. You guys know.
One sec.
I don't know my notes. In any event, I listened.
Deschamps.
Yeah, Deschamps. He was a coach in Europe, a head coach in Europe for a couple of years, and was successful there before he came back to the United States. And I listened to him talk on a hockey podcast. He went on for quite some time, and he's super impressive, very smart. He's very much into technology. He's practiced with his teams by bringing computers down onto the ice and making changes during practices, or making corrections during practices as opposed to doing it later. One of the things he believes in is that if you make the corrections right at the moment, that they're more likely to stick. But he's very much a high tech guy. He seems on the cutting edge of what should be going on in hockey. So I mean, I think he was an excellent choice by Naurato, as was Ryder, who was I think goalie of the year one year as a minor league hockey goalie. And so he has a history playing goalie and coaching goaltenders, and also recruiting for the national team. So it was, or for the U.S. Steel. So it was a good choice.
What do you guys make of Naurato's comments about facilities? He talked about how in the arms race you got like some pro accommodations with some of these. I think he mentioned, I know he mentioned Ohio State. I think he might have mentioned Minnesota, but he said, need to modernize or upgrade or, kind of modify some of the accommodations. I just don't know how much room there is to do much at Yoast. Where do you guys think Michigan is in the arms race? And do you think it's going to develop into a thing that they need to be concerned with?
It's always going to be a problem as long as they got Yoast Ice Arena, because Yoast Ice Arena is literally the first field house in college sports, and it was built as a field house for the needs of a 1920s team. And in order to have a locker room, they had to dig out a basement and now when Michigan wants to go to their locker room, they have to go up and down these stairs. And sometimes they're actually late getting back onto the ice because they're on the stairs. Now, the visitors' locker room is a sheet that they put up, right? And when you're walking out of the game, like after the Wisconsin game last year, everyone's leaving through the doors, like the big mass of fans, and right behind you, you hear their captain just screaming how mad he is about the calls that they had that game. And like there's nowhere for someone to just go in and like throw their hockey stick down and have a meeting. That building was not built for hockey. But on the other hand, it's one of the reasons that Michigan hockey is Michigan hockey, that you have one of the greatest barns for hockey, for the sport. And that's where you get to play. And you walk in there, you can just even with it's not, even though it's not the same it was in the 2000s, you just feel college hockey in that building. So they're probably going to have to build an extension. They're probably going to have to take away some of the football team's parking lot or something in order to get that done. They're not going to be able to have a women's team until they do that. It's on the menu, but it's not an easy.
What about your idea, Ira, real quick? See what they think of that one.
Is there a way to like just build on the west side and like build out between Yoast and the Fish and like take that driveway out where there's a few parking spaces and a walkway? Just close the road down and build locker rooms there.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would go the other direction, to be honest. I think I would go south.
Or you'd go south into the Schembeckler lot, and then you'd have to
you go south.
The Schembeckler lot on the other side of the Glick. You could do that too.
Yeah, that's what I would do. I think that probably makes more sense to go south, and you could go down and south. And so that's, that's my thinking at least. But yeah, they've got to do something. So Narado's correct. It's a great building for hockey, but it needs some expansion.
Well, we tackled a lot of Ohio State today. You got me going there with 45-23. So why don't we end like we started, Seth, and tell folks one more time how they can get Hail to the Victors 2023.
Go to MGoBlog.com and you'll find it up in the right-hand corner, or go to MGoBlogStore.com, or you can go on Amazon. Kim, yes, it's available in digital format. You can buy a PDF right now for $15. We are the limited number of print copies coming in. There's an interest list already. You can get on the interest list if you go on MGoBlog.com and look there and see if you can get a print copy. They're going to be going. I'm not going to have any extras this year. We got way more than we could print. But I mean, it's a great magazine, and you can buy it on Kindle as well. And the Kindle edition has maybe a little bit more words and fewer photos, so it's a little different thing.
There you go. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. We'll see you tomorrow here on the Michigan Insider on